You're a former skateboarder, or still a skateboarder. Started a skateboard company, then an agency, and you've had this interesting career journey. Before we jump into the book and Gen Z, why don't you help us out? Give us your career trajectory. Where did you start, and how did you get to this book about Gen Z?
Shit, we can take the whole trail, huh?
We got time.
Yeah, I mean, I started off my career in Minnesota, a small town in Minnesota called Winona, and got into skateboarding. You know, skateboarding in the 80s was actually, you know, really popular out there too. And we got, I guess, pretty good at skateboarding. We got sponsored and kind of got disgruntled by the companies that were hooking us up. You know, we were like 15 years old. And eventually came up with an idea to start a skateboard company. Me, Al Partnan, Graham Stanners, Sean Andrews. There was a whole crew of pretty established heads back then that I skated with. You know, we toured all over the world together. And really it's just like a classic entrepreneurial case of we're just not happy with the products that have been given to us free, and we're gonna start our own company.
Yeah.
And you know, had no fear about starting our own company, and reached out to well, friends who connected me with other people. I'm not going to get into the whole long-winded story, but eventually we found out that a magazine would run ads for us. We thought that was amazing. Like, we could get ads in a magazine. And then found that a wood company would make skateboard products for us. That was like, okay, I guess it's game on, right? We know how to do everything else. So we started a company called Good Times, and pretty quickly grew into a global brand. There was a lot less competition in 1991, 92. It was pretty much just Good Times come from, to take a step back, it was like half of our team, our group of people was from San Diego, and the other half of our crew was from Minneapolis and Winona, Minnesota, so we were kind of a Midwest slash West Coast company. But at the time, really it was just like Chris Miller with Planet Earth, and then Good Times and Alien Workshop were the only companies that were like from kind of quote unquote from the Midwest, but also had a West Coast connection. So just rode that whole wave of running a skateboarding company, starting to develop clothing and apparel, licensed the brand for snowboards. You know, it was just a hell of a journey. That's like a whole other session, but that was kind of my college. And so inevitably, some of our distributors with that were developing at the time, Sense Footwear, kind of like recruited me to just run their footwear operations. And eventually I did it. And you know, we made a killing for a season. And then I started Era Footwear with Chip Howes at Powerline 6, and had another, you know, good half of a selling season. And you know, we were just kind of riding the wave, and then Nike SB figured out the whole shoe market, and we were just like out of business. Yeah, we just died. And I, you know, had basically I had licensed off my skateboard company, but that wasn't really making me any cash, you know. But anyway, and basically let my whole company go away, and then I had nothing. So I just started picking up the phone, doing what I do, and started asking people what they need help with. And although I was like more like freaking out, like I didn't have any money in my bank account, you know, what was I gonna really do? And I started working with Matt Moffitt and guys at Randoms Hardware, and just then all of a sudden stumbled into Glasso Vitamin Water, started working with Janine Ardolino, just doing whatever kind of work I could. And then I stumbled, but this is actually kind of interesting, because then I started doing consulting with Landscape Structures and Skatewave, and everybody kind of hated the company at the time. They were trying to make skate parks in a way that was a little bit mainstream, and they were telling me that, you know, anything that I said about how to make the product better, they would listen to. And I thought it was weird that this big playground company, you know, asked me to come to their place. I thought it was kind of a joke anyway. And but I took it, and they you know, ended up being this really amazing relationship to establish with them. And remember, there was this meeting about like 3 months into it, and they stopped and they looked at me and my business partner at the time. They're like, "You're our consultants." And I was like, oh, I'm a consultant now, you know? And I was like, oh, that's cool, you know? We get paid to tell people how to do stuff. I was like, this is really gonna go, this is gonna work out. So I started I did a bunch of research, you know, however we did research in '99. And I was like, I'm starting a marketing consultancy. I think I read a book by Alan Weiss, management consultant guy. And I was like, I'm gonna start a business, Premise. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And I was like, what we do is different. I figured what we did was different. We did immersive marketing, like, you know, grassroots marketing. We got in, connected people with the culture. You know, I thought about like just what everybody does in the action sports and the lifestyle brands. You know, we get in a van, we go to the towns, we create havoc, we have something to sell. And when I finally realized that the rest of the world didn't know that, I was like, I'm gonna create that consultancy, that marketing thing, you know, that agency. And really just like from there just took off. And it was like, well, I just worked with so many different brands. I mean, I ended up developing the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids education program, you know, kept working with Glasso Vitamin Water for a while up until, you know, went to Coca-Cola, and just the list of brands is incredible. And it was so successful for almost 15, 16 years. And then in 2016, we were acquired by Motivate, where I sit today as the executive vice president. So it's been obviously there's so many different stories, which maybe we'll get into some of those stories later.
Yeah.
From the trenches, right? But, you know, kind of moved into the agency world and was, you know, trying not to give you the long-winded answer, but basically, I've been in I guess you would call it a thought leadership position within youth. I call it youth culture. I feel like that's what we really do, is connect people with culture. And I was contacted by Kogan Page, and they wanted a book to inform everyone on Gen Z, which was a lot of the research and the work and the strategies that I was developing. And long story short, you know, they asked me to do the book. I wanted to do the book. It's been kind of a bucket list, a goal of mine. But I also felt like nobody needs a Gen Z book. In all honesty, you know, it was kind of funny because I'm called a Gen Z expert, but I'm an observer that knows how to facilitate young people who happen to be Gen Z to inform strategies that help brands. But I felt like a book on Gen Z would be time-stamped. And what would really be the value in 10 years of that, to go look back and think of what people thought Gen Z was. But I said what I really want to do and what I need as a professional, and what I felt all my colleagues and other brands needed, was just a way to learn how to engage young people. Mm-hmm. And I basically came back with that as a core concept with the Gen Z frequency, and they were completely open to it. And so there we go.
So that's how you got here. Look at that, skateboarding. Look at where it took you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hear people say that, I've heard it from people say skateboarding saves lives. I mean, I think that that's true. I also think, you know, skateboarding is an art and a sport and a lifestyle that actually, you know, also helps shape lives in a way too. Yeah,
I've seen quite a few guys take their passion for skateboarding and turn it into amazing careers. And I think I've seen a lot of guys do that in action sports. So it's great to see this trajectory, you know, where you're kind of part of the core, and all of a sudden now you're kind of working with non-endemic brands and trying to get them to understand this generation. And, you know, look, I think every generation has had this type of book or conversation take place. Yeah. Everybody is trying to decode Gen X, which was my generation, and then Gen Y, and then Gen Z, and millennials, and you name it. And I think, you know, while there may be a timestamp on the book, I think it's going to be relevant for at least 3 to 5 years. Yeah. And it'll just probably give you a runway for your next book, which I don't know what they'll call the next generation.